Welcome back, everyone, to our 3PL Summit. And up next, we are diving into the world of fraud. Of course, it's security challenges and the companies that are working to overcome them. And who not have the best of the best with us. With us is Lisa from Truckstop. Lisa, I would love if you could introduce yourself to the audience and the work that you do at Truckstop as well.
Yeah, happy to. Thanks for having me, Grace. Hi, Lisa Haubenstock. I have been with Truckstop for just over 4 years. I have done a lot of different things at Truckstop. I started in the customer success side. I've done support and data operations, all of our customer support operations. And then about a year ago, I moved over to be our vice president of product, focusing a lot on our risk, compliance, fraud prevention solutions. Helping us sort of drive innovation and really ultimately help our customers and this entire industry help protect against fraud.
I love having this viewpoint because you've been a part of not only Truckstop's growth, but in those roles too, right? You get to see how fraud has affected the customer at the end of the day, which is really what we're trying to fight against. And I've had multiple conversations with Truckstop on this topic. It's a huge concern, of course, in our industry. And in your opinion, what do you think are the biggest security challenges in particular that we're facing as a freight sector as a whole?
Yeah, so I think unlike a lot of other industries in freight, we have to fight the fraud battle on multiple fronts. So we're not just dealing with maybe identity theft, but you're also dealing with actual physical asset theft, double brokering, cyber attacks. And so there are a lot of different vectors that you really have to think about as opposed to just only going in sort of one specific area. Something that I talk a lot about in this space is people, especially over the past couple of years, have been talking about fraud as a new thing in freight, and I like to fact check that. Um, so we've actually been tracking reported incidents of fraud for nearly 30 years. And so what we can see is that fraud, despite maybe people assuming that it's correlated with a typical 18 to 24-month freight cycle, we actually can see that it's much more heavily correlated with economic cycles. So the last time we saw a really big increase was back in 2009 when we had our economic recession. And then what we've seen in since 2022, really in 2023, is a combination both of coming down from the epic year of 2021 that we had post COVID. Then also tying in with the economic impact that has been happening over the past couple of years. And then the third element is really just think about the amount of technological advancement that has happened since 2009. So just like the whole game has changed about how bad actors really even the tools that they have and the level of sophistication that they have coming into trying to achieve what the theft that they are trying to achieve. And then the fourth piece that makes it just a real perfect storm. The nature of supply chain means there are a lot of handoffs. There's a lot of manual steps where it's just reliant on an individual human, following steps and protocol to the best of their ability. And a lot of the companies involved in all of these handoffs were not built to be technology first. So they're sort of coming up from behind, working on improving their technology stack, the amount of data and access and automation that they have to kind of really battle smart, sophisticated bad actors coming from the opposite direction. And so they're changing their tactics really quickly. They exploit, exploit, exploit. We might catch up. They're already on to the next thing. And so it's a constant game of whack-a-mole to really battle.
The catch-up aspect, it's interesting because I was just reading a NSA report that came out a few weeks ago, just talking about that technological problem we're having across all business sectors, right? The technology is coming to fruition and people are using it, but the security behind it, there's a huge gap in what we are protecting ourselves from. And just like you said, as we get to a point where we are maybe feel fully protected, but that type of fraud or even the security challenges change or escalate to a whole different level. So it's almost like you take, two steps forward, one step back at situation, and you always feel behind. And I'm interested, especially in your role and product as well, in looking at especially brokers out there, right? A lot of the audience today at the 3PL Summit. How can these businesses better protect themselves in 25? How can they make up for that gap in security with the technology that we're all implementing?
For sure. And you're completely right, which is unfortunately, you can't just implement one thing and check the box and say that we're done on fraud. This has to be an ongoing thing that you really invest in on a continuous basis. I obviously come from the tech world. I definitely think about this from a tech perspective. But what I actually like to always start with is that the things that companies overlook the most are actually the easiest, lowest hanging non-tech fruit, if you will. And so I like to just kind of always talk about those as well. And so I really talk to brokers about before you go and make a ton of investments in fancy technology, do an internal assessment of sort of like three key things. So one is what level of confidence do we have that our employees adhere to basic InfoSec standards? Do they successfully detect phishing attempts? Do they know not to have the same password for multiple websites? Do we enforce minimum password requirements? The second is, have we established our own policy to define our risk threshold? So technology tends to only be as good as the information that you can put in it. And if you haven't established your threshold, how much risk you're willing to take, what you're looking for, you're going to actually be minimizing the amount of impact that you get out of that technology. And then the third piece is how are you working with your customers and your carriers to ensure that they're also paying attention to the pieces that matter? So, like I said, there are handoffs here. If your shippers aren't paying attention to who they're giving freight to at the docks, and if your carriers aren't paying attention to keeping their credentials safe, the whole supply chain can still have opportunity to break down. And that I'll really just emphasize the carrier relationships here. So, Grace, you've been in this industry a long time. Relationships really, really matter here. It's because brokers spend so much time building these relationships with carriers, it means that your frontline sales reps are the best people to do this education with carriers. And so the same kind of InfoSec education that you're giving to your employees, really think about how then your employees can cascade that information down to carriers. Okay, so that's sort of the non-tech piece. I'll go into the tech piece, which is yes, bad actors are using technology often broader and better than we are, and so we have to fight fire with fire. Technology plays a lot of really valuable roles. So one is looking to find technology that helps you maximize your access to data. So typically, as an individual broker, you are not going to have as broad a set of data in a consolidated way, not only for you to collect that data, analyze that data, but then also make it actionable. And so, because bad actors are changing their tactics really quickly, the best way to help identify them is by really looking at behavioral patterns, behavioral trends, and then when those behaviors start to diverge from the norm, and then automating workflow once you start to identify risk. So first you're saying, how do I get access to a huge amount of data that is actionable and insightful? And then pair that back to creating those risk policies that I mentioned before, saying, here's how we want to handle that level of risk. What we see is one of the most common root causes of fraud really comes down to human error. It's someone's either accidentally missing a key piece of data because they're moving quickly, or they kind of intentionally overlook something because they have a deadline to hit. We're all trying to get something to deliver to our customers, and it's this constant trade-off between risk and due diligence and actually getting loads where they need to be. And so being really thoughtful and defining here's how our standards look on a per load basis, on a per customer basis, and then using technology that helps you automate that so that you can both enforce and then you have a secondary benefit of increasing productivity and helping people do their job better, faster, in a more impactful way. So it's a real double whammy there. And the third thing I'll just say is vet technology partners. If you aren't holding your technology partners to the same standards that you're holding yourself internally, you want to look for partners with a strong track record who have good financial backing and are going to be a partner with you in the long run and not leave you hanging. And so, really thinking about how you do that is important.
It's interesting, and you brought it up even with the human and the technology side. It's almost like a level of being honest about your operations and where there could potentially be flaws, and even saying, "Yeah, there is a big opportunity for this step to be missed. How can we change that, to avoid, these terrific or terrible, I guess, outcomes," right? So, that works for both the operations, the technology side, but also the people involved with those actions as well. And I mean, that was a lot of great tips right there. I'm interested in you think companies should do to stay ahead of the evolving tactics we're seeing, right? Because that's another big key about this is if they follow all the guidelines that you brilliantly just showcased right there, well, tomorrow could be different. And so how do you stay up to date with the latest trends that we're seeing in this space? And what advice would you give to viewers as well?
Absolutely. So I'll start with I think my recommendation to viewers, to brokers, shippers. As much as I just spent a lot of time talking about fraud, our recommendation would be instead of focusing on fraud first, really think about it as opportunities to build trust. And so again, this is a relationship industry, and the more you can build trust both with your customers, with carriers, with your partners, it's going to be a secret weapon when leveraged really well. We really strive to be the most trusted network in freight. And so, how we think about staying ahead of evolving fraud tactics is really along the same lines, which is how do we team up with really trustworthy partners, customers, across the board so that we can both enforce the security of our system to ultimately deliver better products to our customers. I'll just give you a couple quick examples of that. We're celebrating the 2-year anniversary of our partnership with a company called Certificial that helps us with our insurance processing flow. So we really strive to have robust and highly accurate insurance information for carriers to help assess whether or not they're qualified to work with any given broker. Certificial helps us connect directly with insurance providers via APIs so that we know that the information is in our system is identical to the information that an insurance provider has in their system. And also that we get really timely updates if a certificate is canceled. That's one of the biggest pain points that anyone has is we don't get visibility to canceled coverage. And so this helps us just really make sure that we're maximizing our impact and the delivering that value back to our customers. And then we spend a lot of time really enforcing the quality of people that are operating within our network. So we blocked nearly 13,000 suspicious attempts to do something in our RMIS product last year. That's in addition to another 10,000 suspicious attempts from our load board. And overall, we are monitoring over 70,000 users across our system to make sure that we're preventing bad actors from entering our network and vetting the quality of any kind of customer, broker, carrier, or shipper that's interacting in our network. And so, as much as you can do a lot of those same sort of steps within your own systems, but then also, like I mentioned, finding partners that help you maximize access and utility of data to automate that because it's not every broker is going to be able to make the kind of investment to do all three on their own.
Definitely, and especially, the customers that you help with. I mean, I was just in that spot, a small, medium-sized broker relied on and trusted it to go full circle, right? Truckstop to do that due diligence as well, and I think this has just been an excellent segment for everyone watching. I mean, take this transcript and turn this into work for you for the next couple of weeks out there, brokers, because I think there's a lot of steps that we can take as a team. And as we have to look at these problems as a team, as an industry together. They're not going to get solved with just one participant. We all kind of have to say, hey, this is what we could do better and work towards those goals as a whole. So, I want to thank you, Lisa, for laying out that outline for our audience as well, and for everyone watching. I hope you enjoy this and enjoy the rest of the summit too.
Thanks so much.